Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Woot woot. Always so excited for the listener question and stories episodes. They're some of my favorite to record. And I've been really excited about this idea of the witchy book club every single month. So this month for my witchy book recommendation, I want to recommend a book by a guest from season 1, Lisa Lister, from episode 119, All Things She Power. And that book is Witch. Her book, Witch, was such an activation and an opener for me on my path. I've spoken about it before, but I was like, this has to be, if it's not the first book I recommended, it has to be the second because it is such a good book. It has so many codes of just remembering and awakening throughout it. I felt all the feelings. It woke up parts of me that had just gone back to sleep. So I highly recommend that book. And if you've taken my Healing the Witch Wound workshop, it's part of my recommended reading for that workshop as well. So highly, highly recommend it.
Yes, I have that in my Audible library and I have yet to start it, but this is a good reminder to start it.
I know. I feel like I'm loading you up with books.
I love it though. I love it.
I know. There's nothing better than a good book, honestly. Like Barnes and Noble, my mom did a really cool thing when she raised me and she said, any book you want, I'll buy for you. So she encouraged me to be such a reader and I could spend hours in Barnes and Noble. I've always been such a reader and it was so magical having a mom that supported my love for learning and knowledge and reading. And she really understood because my mom was the same way. So one of the coolest things when she passed was inheriting her bookshelf. It makes me feel very close to her reading the books that I know she read too. So just really special. Books are really special.
I agree. I've always been such an avid reader and as a kid just gobbled up books. It's like an adventure into a whole new world and it gets to be such a personal thing too. And I feel like whenever I'm reading a book, I also remember like where I was or who I was while I was reading it. And so it holds this special, it's like this time capsule of this private world I got to experience in my mind. And I just love it. And I love sharing books with people that really resonated with me because then it's like we get to connect about this magical world that exists only in our minds.
Yeah. And I think that books are a big way that our guides get messages to us too. It's like sometimes we think so strictly in terms of getting guidance looks like pulling a tarot card, but I really feel like our guides communicate to us through everything and the universe is always speaking a language to us. And a hunger for knowledge and a hunger for curiosity is such a way our guides communicate. But then there's also bibliomancy, which is just asking a question and then feeling which book you're pulled to and feeling which page you're pulled to and finding the answer on a page. It's like we can get so creative with our divining tools and practices. And it's really interesting because I find that if you have, and I actually experienced this with my mom, but through a movie where I found out some really interesting news about a secret that was kept from me by her, but she had already passed away. And it was very emotionally complicated for me because when you have something that comes up and the person that you're in conflict with is no longer here, it can be really complicated emotionally. And I feel called to share that our angels, our guides, our past loved ones, they send us the answer in different forms, whether it's through a character's journey in a book that you can resonate with, whether it's for me, I was so mad about my mom keeping this secret. And then my goddaughter was in town. Ari and I took her to go see this Ruby Gilman movie. We didn't know what it was about. She just wanted to go see it. And the whole movie was about a mom keeping a secret from a daughter to keep her safe. And the mom was like, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. You were strong enough to know the secret, but I was just trying to keep you safe. And like, it was uncanny, the message, like, and the synchronicity there. And so I think right now that's just coming through to share is like, books and movies and stories, it's like they're all for us. There's such edification in them, but there's also such an avenue for our guides to communicate to us through them too, like the exact themes that we needed to know.
That's so cool. I love that story so much. I agree. It's like books and movies and music too. It's like those are the stories and the poetry that helps us understand our experience. I think that's why we resonate so deeply with them because they're like a expression of these shared understood experiences. And So it makes sense that our guides would utilize them to help us understand ourselves deeper. And I think that's such a big part of Magic Hour and such a big theme of everything that we talk about on here is that connection and magic can be everywhere in your experience if you're willing to look for it and notice it. And once you start to look for it and notice it, it's just amazing all the ways that it can pop up and support you.
Absolutely. And that leads me to what I wanted to talk about next, which was I've been getting this message, and I might have shared it on the podcast before, about how the planets are spirit guides and how basically the planets create this energetic jigsaw of energy that our consciousness has to navigate. So if it was just up to us, things would be easy and abundant and flowing all the time, but we might also not learn ourselves or understand the duality of life or the depth of what we were capable of if that was the case. And so planets are doing this dance, and they each represent a different lesson and vibrational awareness for human consciousness. And the way that they intricately spiral and do this dance is like directing our consciousness, our lessons, our soul growth so that we can better understand and know ourselves. And that's exactly what spirit guides do too. And when we learn the language of them, we learn the language just like we learn the language of our spirit guides. It's just another way that the universe is speaking to us and guiding our soul. And through pattern recognition, time, trust, and intuition, we can unlock that language. And so I was writing about this last night because sometimes, and if you're like a spiritual content creator, I'm sure you'll resonate with this, there's just sometimes this urgency. I have to write this down. I have to write this down. And so what's really funny is I haven't posted this yet, but of course this is coming out a month or so from now. So, maybe I've posted at this point, but at the time I was writing all this down, and it was just such a beautiful message. I was getting this message how the planets show us that our development is not linear. It's always a spiral dance that goes deeper. And they show us that sometimes there's harmony and sometimes there's tension, but that's always an opportunity to know ourselves more. And so there was like all these beautiful things here with the planets as spirit guides. So then I put my phone down, I wrote that post, and I go to read my book, which I spoke about in the March listener questions, which is On the Side of Angels, which is the autobiography of Gordon Higginson. The first paragraph of that page that I picked up on, it was talking about a medium, and her spirit guide was named Zodiac. And I was like, what are the odds? That's just an example of like your guides working overtime and being so in flow. Like I just got this message. I was writing all this stuff about the planets as spirit guides. And then the first sentence was like her spirit guide named Zodiac. I was like, okay, message heard, received loud and clear. I will post this post.
That is magical. I love that. What a cool name for a spirit guide too. Zodiac. I love that.
I know. In the book, their names are so cool. They're like Zodiac, Power, Light. They have all of these different names.
Well, and that was a suggestion from Rebecca Campbell of you could choose to name your spirit guides. But that's so cool. I totally feel that with what you're talking about with the planets. And I feel like that makes even more sense why astrology resonates, or like what astrology even is like the explanation of that influence and guidance. And we just had the lunar eclipse last night, and I feel it. It's like even standing at my window looking up at it, and I was just meditating or connecting into it, and it was palpable, the energy that I felt. So yeah, I think when we can really listen in and tap in, it's just like untold magic all around us.
Yeah. And I feel like in terms of the planets being spirit guides as well, they're also spirit guides that measure time and cycles and patterns. And so, similar to how our spirit guides leave these little Easter eggs that when we look back, we're like, oh my God, we were supported the whole time. Same with astrology and with the planets. Like you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, Saturn was in the same sign, which started this cycle. Everything makes sense in retrospect too, if you really get deep into the language of astrology. So I just love all of the ways that analogy really fits. And last night when I was writing about it, I was like, oh my gosh, it was just flowing through. And then I saw that paragraph and I was like, wow, magical.
I love that. And I did a card pull for myself recently, and something you said really connected to that of, we want to make sense of our world, and we want to make sense of the like series of events that happen to us and around us. And sometimes it just feels hard to understand the patterns, or we're like imposing a pattern on it so that we can understand it. And the card was just really saying you can't understand all of the reasons why your life is taking all the paths that it takes. And there are invisible forces that are guiding you and helping you. And so even if you want to be like, this is why this happened and this is why this happened, it's like there's so much more at play than we can understand with our five senses. And I think that can be helpful if you're struggling with a situation or bumping up against a problem again and again. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem or that this isn't the right path for you. I think just kind of surrendering to the unfolding of events and knowing that you're guided and helped and that things are happening for you, not to you, has been a really helpful concept for me lately.
Yeah, I love that. And I think to add on to that, the idea of how the planets guide us too is teaching us that not everything is instant. Like some planets take 12 years to go around, some take 44 to complete a cycle. It's like we think, okay, what the heck? It's been 6 months. Like, why hasn't my whole life changed? But the planets also set the pace. And Pluto is the slowest moving planet, and it's death and rebirth. It represents death and rebirth and is the spirit guide planet force of those themes, like Phoenix energy. And it's the slowest one. So I think there's also lessons like Mercury is the fastest one, how we think, our ideas, what pops in. It's like Venus is next. But then, like, I think we can learn a lot from the pacing and the timing that the planets set and like what their themes rule as well.
Yeah. And trusting that like timing is everything with it too. We want to rush. We want to get all the things we want to get. And I even think about that with my career. It's like when I first got to LA, I was so ready for my success and big opportunities. And I certainly feel now like way more prepared for a big opportunity because of the time I've spent and the work I've done and the reps I've put in performing and writing and creating. Like I'm so much more ready for a big opportunity to come my way now, even though when I first got here, I was impatiently ready then. And that's not to say that things can't come in different ways, but just trusting that like sometimes the slower pace of something, even though our mind wants to say, faster, faster, is really in our highest good. And how can we flow with those things instead of fighting upstream with the idea of what we think it should be? Like this understanding of I can't fully know all of the intricate magic and strings and reasons. And if I can surrender to that, I'm probably more available to the magic and the lessons and the growth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's an element of ancestral healing that can be tied to that too, because I think for previous generations, waiting and spaciousness and allowing for the timing to unfold probably felt very unsafe, especially if we had ancestors that lived through things that threatened survival. I think it's like an act of cycle breaking and reclamation of full power to trust the timing. Nothing says trust in the universe and surrender more than that. I wanted to say too, since I brought up Gordon Higginson again and I'm reading his book, there was a really cool story in the book that I wanted to share. So he's talking about how in the 60s and 70s, it was a great time period for mediumship. And he would go around the UK and Europe. He would demonstrate for thousands of people. They would have to turn people away at the doors. And it was just like such an amazing time. And part of me like yearns for that. Like I wish that spiritualism was still really big today. And there still is Arthur Findlay College, and I love it so much. But I just feel like spiritualism has scattered out, or there's been like a lot of fighting within the organization. It's like what Teresa said on our episode with her about how as soon as there's a hierarchy, it's like it gets a little bit complicated. But the spirit world is always working, and the spirit world is always here, and it will always find its way to get the message across. So he was telling a story about how he was demonstrating, and there was like 1,000 people in the hall. I think it was like Albert Hall or something, but he would sell out huge arenas like Tyler Henry does today. And he said there were two ladies. So he was giving his evidence. He had somebody that he connected with in the spirit world. And there were two ladies across the hall from each other that kept saying, yes, 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 they could take everything. And so he was asking spirit, like, get more specific, get more specific. Yes, 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 they could still take everything. And he was getting so frustrated because there's no way that they have the same name, the same job, they pass the same way. Turns out those two women were sisters. And they didn't know because they were sitting all the way across from each other in this arena. So they didn't know they were sisters. And once he found that out, it made sense because it was the same person that was connecting with both of them. And that story was so funny and interesting to me.
Wow, that's such an experience of trust. It's like you talked about that a lot of like, even when you're giving evidence and maybe the answer is no, still trusting in the evidence that you're coming in with. And that then later, sometimes it lands in a way where the person will be like, oh, actually, yeah, now I see. It was my stepbrother. It was my dad's best friend that's kind of like an uncle or whatever. I think that trust is so huge and must be like really terrifying while you're doing it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest takeaways from the book for me is like the way that there is just this unfaltering trust in the spirit world. And that is what makes you a good medium. Like, literally, the only thing to becoming a developed medium is doing the self development enough to sit in the unknown, to trust what you're getting, and to be okay with looking silly or something, like just saying everything. And so, yeah, it's really cool. And it's really cool to hear the stories of the mediums that came before and how excellent they were. It's very, very inspirational for sure.
Yeah. And I think, too, to your point of feeling that pull to that time period when it was really being embraced and all that. And I know it's complicated now, but I really feel like in the past 10 years that we've known each other, like it has become so. I mean, I remember like you were one of the first people and a couple other lady friends of mine, my roommate, who were kind of like into witchy stuff. And I was like, cute, witchy stuff. Okay. And then slowly, I felt like I was like, oh, I'm in a coven. Am I a witch? We're doing witchcraft and we're doing moon rituals. And then my practice developed. And now, and of course, being connected to you in this community, I feel it very strongly, but it feels so much more common and available and accessible and just like in the zeitgeist. Like so many people I know are connecting to their spirituality and exploring new ways of thinking about the spirit world and spirituality in a way that I definitely felt like 15 years ago wasn't happening and wasn't like such a touch point. So I do think we are living in a time period where it is like more common than ever to be a witch and to have divining tools and to do moon rituals. And to me, that's really exciting. I think it speaks to the expansion of consciousness that's happening, that we all feel happening, and this up leveling that we're doing as a consciousness, and that so many of us are finding these tools and being drawn to this way of looking at things.
That's so true. And I do feel that. And I do love that. Like, honestly, I think that my one caveat is that in this modern day, it's not as evidence based as it was back then. So there's a lot of beauty in that. And I'm so happy for the hummingbird community to know this already, that there needs to be a level of like evidence and the practitioner knowing things they couldn't have known. And that's what I love about spiritualism, is that it was so based in service and integrity. And so while our spiritual world is very diverse today, and I am really happy that there's more people waking up to their magic and their intuition, I also think that there can be a lot of like smoke and mirrors and snake oil salesmen. And I'm sure that always exists. But what I loved about the golden age of spiritualism is that they really pushed themselves to get firmer evidence. And I would love to see that in our spiritual community today, is like, how clear can I get that I can prove that life exists after physical death and that all of this magic is real? And at a certain point, like spiritualism, intuition, witchcraft, like it all kind of bleeds and blends into the other. With witchcraft, it's like the evidence is how we feel. It's like our connection with the magic. So it's a little bit different, but just especially for the psychic work, I think that there's just a need in today's day and age, because it's almost like a rebirth, that we remember the parameters within it that are grounded, evidence-based, and empowering. But to that point, Claire, it's so funny because, I was raised by an astrologer. My mom was an astrologer. And back then, no one knew what astrology was. Like in the 90s and early 2000s, they were like, you and your mom are really weird. And we would just like brew tea and do witchy things and read people's birth charts. And every single lady that my uncle dated, we like did her birth chart. And we're like, ah, ha, ha, ha. like telling him about her. It was so funny. But of course, like in an ethical way, we were like, we like this one. But anyway, I remember I was with Ari at Sandals. I took him there for his 30th birthday when we were first dating. And it was like this classic situation where we were all in the hot tub and there were these other couples there and everyone was going around saying what they do. And that's always like a eye roll moment for me. And so everyone was like, I'm an engineer, I'm a nurse, I'm a construction worker. Everybody was going around saying their thing. And it got to me and I was like, I'm a angelic intuitive and astrologer. And that's before I was doing the psychic mediumship as well. And everybody just got a little quiet in the hot tub and was like, huh. And then this guy was like, well, I'm a Leo. And that to me was a perfect example of where we are now. It's like pop astrology has become so popular. Everybody knows their signs. That to me showed exactly like what you were saying, that it's more in the zeitgeist, that people are talking about it a little bit more. Whereas in the past, people probably would have just got up and left the hot tub.
That's so funny. It is such a funny experience telling people what you do. And like now by extension, I do that because I work for you doing your scheduling and doing the podcast. So then people will ask me about it. I'm like, oh, I work for my friend's business. They're like, what's her business? I'm like, how ready are you for what I'm about to say next? Are you cool? Are you on the level? Or are you going to be like, eye roll, what's that? And it's a good barometer of who's a good vibe. You know, it's like how open they are to hearing about it and how receptive they are or how resistant they are to it. And so, yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, it for sure is so much more even people's big three, like a lot of people know that. And I think it's cool. I'm sure people are doing it more surface or like a lot of people are doing it more surface, but sometimes that's the way in. It's like first you start there and then you get more connected. That's definitely what happened to me is I was kind of like, yeah, cute. This is fun. And then I really started to dive into it and it became something much more profound for me.
Yeah, I think that's how everybody has to start. It's like with any skill or any knowledge, you have to start somewhere and then it continues to call to you and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, let's do this. I love that. Let's get into some listener questions.
Okay, we have so many beautiful questions. Thank you so much for sending in your questions and your stories. We love receiving them. contact@magichourpod.com. Please send them in. As Taylor says, if it's something that you might DM her, that's a great question. We love to hear your thoughts and ideas or things that got sparked while you were listening to an episode. So keep them coming. Okay, this is a question from Julie. Taylor and Claire, I just love your podcast and all the messages you bring to the collective. Thank you for always inviting listeners to share their stories and questions. I feel that I do my best channeling when I wait for spirit to come to me. Most of the time, I'm sitting alone, not doing anything, when I either get an urge to write or a surge of energy in my body that almost feels like fight or flight. I've come to recognize that feeling as spirit knocking on my door. It's like I need to wait for that to happen. Otherwise, if I go searching for spirit, I don't always get a good connection. I'm curious, how does that knocking feel for you? Or do you always seek them out when you need to? Does it feel different depending on who's coming through, an angel versus a loved one? I don't always get a clear sense of who is coming through, so I rely on yes or no questions. Do you have any advice on strengthening my abilities to receive clearer answers? Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you so much for this question, Julie. It's a really good one, and I know it's going to help a lot of people. I want to start by just saying for all of the listener questions, once the question is asked, I'm speaking to all of you. So I don't want you to feel like I'm just like harping on Julie right now or harping on somebody who sent in a question. This is me explaining all the possible ways that this could be showing up, and then take what resonates with you. So urgency, and this is so funny that this question came up because I was talking about that sense of urgency like when I was getting that message to share. So it's such a funny synchronicity, which of course, but urgency is a feeling that is tied to clairsentience, psychic feeling that lets us know, okay, I need to hear something, I need to write something, I need to say something. So like for me, for example, when I'm recording Magic Hour and inspired speaking comes through, there is a sense of urgency for me to say it. My voice gets a little stronger and louder, and you just feel a little bit more sure of what you're saying, what you're writing, what's coming through, what you know, etc. So that urgency is really important. Where I want to urge caution is that sometimes there are certain little tells in the beginning of our intuitive development practice that we can start to rely on as a crutch, where we feel like if I'm not getting this urgency, then that doesn't mean I'm ready to connect or I can't connect, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we don't want, because that is not truth. So sometimes, say for example, when I was first starting mediumship, this thing would happen where I would start to see orbs of light as the spirit people. They would get closer and closer to me until they got so close that I would literally start like shaking, like vibrating. And at Arthur Findlay College, a few people said that they experienced the same thing. But here's the problem with that. One is that it's not professional to shake like that. And two, it was making me get to a place where I felt like I had to rely on that to know I was really connected. And my teacher was like, nip that in the bud right now. That's not it. So, what I don't want to happen for you is that you get into a place where it feels like I can't connect if I don't get that affirmation through urgency. And so this is for everybody. When you're first starting your intuitive development practice, I really recommend that you show up in like intentionally completely different ways, because we can get so connected to like, I only sit in this direction, I meditate this amount, I hold this crystal, I only use this deck. You need to shake it up because you can actually connect on demand whenever you want. So that's very important to know. So this sense of searching for spirit, like you said, it was interesting to me how you said that those moments of urgency come in silence. I think that's really good. Creating sacred space, creating silence, like that is a space that your guides can fill. But yeah, I think watch the superstition that it can only look like that. So that being said, when you're on the beginning of your development journey, it can take a little bit longer to get to the place where it's like on demand connecting regularly. That takes practice. It took me years to get to that place. So now I want to go into when you said it's harder when I search for spirit, because this is very important. Allowing spirit to come through is different than searching for spirit energetically. So first, you opened up that container of silence and spaciousness. You get this clairsentient feeling of like this urgency that something needs to be expressed, and you meet it. That's beautiful. Now, when you said, sometimes I have a harder time searching for spirit, that to me feels more in alignment with forcing, not flowing, and trying to control your spiritual practice. So that can happen, for example, when you're like, spirit guides, tell me the answer to XYZ. Okay, I'm ready. And it's like, I think where we have better success is just saying, spirit, I want to feel your love. Spirit, let me know anything you need me to right now. Take my readings, for example. If I go into that reading feeling like, spirit, you need to be here and I need this message right now and this is what I need and it has to be this caliber, that's the mind taking over. That is the mind trying to run the show. And that's one of the biggest blocks of our intuitive connection. Whereas if it's like, I have complete faith that whatever needs to be revealed to this sitter right now will, and I'm just going to say what I get with complete trust. And that's a muscle that has to be built. So when it comes to our personal divining practice, there is this sense for, I'm not going to hold the reins of control. I'm not going to compare my practice to what other people's looks like. And my job is creating the sacred space. How my guides fill it is up to them. It's also my job to find some playful curiosity, to create momentum for my angels to work with, to try out new things, to see what feels good. It's not my job to be militant, to be judgmental, or try to force things. So I think that's in the vein of where it goes searching for spirit, because we don't have to search for spirit. Spirit is literally right here. The spirit world is right here. We just have to tap into it. So it sounds to me like you're in a really exciting part of your development. One of the questions that you asked was, who's coming through? How do you know who's coming through? That is a part of experience and development. You can get to a place where you know exactly who's coming through. Angels do feel different than past loved ones. So that being said, angels I connect with at the top of my crown. Past loved ones I connect with in my heart. And they speak a little bit differently. They feel a little bit differently. But that's the thing. We have so many different guides and loved ones and angels around us in that realm that it does take a while to detangle our experience of them. And that's why setting an intention is really important. So you can say, my intention for this session is to connect with my angels. My intention for this session is to connect to my past loved ones. My intention for this session, and lean into your clairs. If it's feeling that's coming up for you a lot, like my intention is to feel one of my main guides' energy today and anything else you want me to know about them. Like you can set those kind of parameters and then just allow. If it doesn't come through, it doesn't come through. One of the most important things is following the power. So this is going to be built up through time and experience and different interactions with different types of guides. And also, what's coming through intuitively is that there's big lessons in trust. So I feel like there also might be opportunities for you to work with other people or friends and create, because sometimes we don't realize how much information we're getting when it's ourselves. And when we sit with people that we couldn't have known things for and then we share it, it builds trust. So there is no trusting our angels and guides if we do not trust ourselves. And building self-trust and creating opportunities for that self-trust feels intuitively really important to share. You also said something really interesting, that when you get that surge of connection and urgency, it feels like fight or flight. And that's also important to mention because our nervous system is an imperative part of the intuitive connection. And so oftentimes before we read for people, we get this sense of fear and anxiousness, but really it's just our nervous system revving up. So it's actually a good sign when there's this sense of, oh my gosh, the urgency is kicking in and it can feel a little like jittery. That is us, literally our body raising our vibes so that we can meet them halfway. And that is like a physical symptom of that connection. So yeah, it seems to me like you're in a place where you could benefit from next level development, maybe learning from somebody who's a little bit down the path from you, because you're getting those initial instincts. And now I think that there's just room for like a little bit more practice, opportunities to stretch yourself, opportunities to show up in new ways that build experiences and trust and confidence in yourself. Because yeah, it sounds like a really exciting moment. But what I don't want for anybody who finds themselves in this space is to start to create crutches that you'll have to undo later in your development, like those superstitions that I was talking about. And this reminds me, so the timing of this is really funny too. So if you listen to episode 203, which is all things angels, our first episode on that, I talk about in the Sitting with Spirit how I'm developing a mentorship container. And I've been seeing like a need for this. Like those of you in the hummingbird community, I feel like you're doing the preliminary work of all these things that we're talking about, but now you could use some exercises to stretch you and grow you and show you what's possible. So it's funny because I actually this has been keeping me awake at night. Like speaking about urgency, I'm having ideas, I'm writing down things and I'm still workshopping it, but I know that the name is going to be Becoming the Oracle. And I'm very excited for it. I'm going to most likely take 8 students at a time. And I have this questionnaire. So some people have already expressed interest in it, like about 50 of you. And I am going to send you all a questionnaire of what's your experience? What are your main clairs? What are you hoping to get from this? And then I'm going to intuitively pair groups of 8 that I think will work well together and take you through a container with me, practicing your intuition and getting the clarity that you need, because these questions that Julie are asking are questions that take a career of experience. So it's like, that is the journey, like understanding what types of guides you're working with, understanding how to create a relationship where you can tune into the spirit world on demand, not from a place of forcing, but just flowing with the currents that are there, building self-trust, building confidence. This is not only a whole podcast worth of information, it's a whole series of podcasts worth of information to answer these questions. So I'm so excited because my mentorship container is going to be unlike other things because it blends everything that I love, including the elements of overcoming fear and healing the witch wound. And we're going to go on such a deep journey into becoming the oracle. So more info on that, stay posted.
Oh, so exciting, Taylor. So exciting. And I know our hummingbird community is all aflutter about it. We've been getting such beautiful messages. I think Julie actually also mentioned that she was interested in her email. So lots of amazing feedback from you and just such an exciting offering. And something that I would say too, Julie, as someone who is much less developed than Taylor and is on my own development journey. It's funny what we were talking about in the opening about timing and like the planets taking time. I think that's also part of it. And we can be in this moment with our divining practices where we feel like, okay, I want to have a really strong connection and I want to feel really sure when I get the answers. For instance, for me, I use Oracle decks. That's my main divining tool. And I spread them out usually and run my hand over the space above them and try and figure out which one to pick. And really, it feels a bit like a shot in the dark every time I do it. Like, I'm not really having the experience that Taylor talks about where, like, I know this is the card or images are popping into my mind. I instead, though, and I think because I'm not having those experiences, it has created this release and like trust in that whatever card I end up landing on is the one I was meant to land on. Even if I didn't have this like ecstatic ping or this surge of knowing, if my hand is going over it and my finger grazes it, I'll usually be like, okay, that was the sign. Or if I hear a car alarm go off as I'm over it, I might decide, okay, this is the one. And it's usually feels pretty uncertain for me and a little bit like looking around in the dark. But I feel like that's become part of my practice. And sometimes I won't even spread them out like that. Sometimes I'll just shuffle. And then as I'm holding them in my hand, be like, okay, this one. And I choose to let that be the like intuitive knowing. And then sometimes the message really resonates. And sometimes it's perplexing. And then months later, it might land. So I think there is this level of like, as you're developing, knowing that it's accumulating, even if in this moment, it might feel like, man, I felt pretty uncertain and I'm not really sure who I was talking to. But because you keep coming back to it, because you keep staying open to it, it is going to develop and expand. And like this reading I did the other night, like I just do feel a deeper connection now. I just do feel more tuned in. And it's been years of me doing this, probably 8 to 10 years that I've known Taylor and been pulling cards for myself. And I still wouldn't call myself anywhere near Taylor's level, but still it really showed me that surrendering to the process and trusting that it's taking the time it needs to take. And even if you don't feel sure, it's still connection has been super, super helpful for me.
I love that, Claire. And I think that's so relatable. Every single person has to start somewhere, including me. And that's why I took the pressure off of myself and said, I'm doing free readings, practice readings for a year, because I felt like I was pulling in the dark as well. And yeah, I would get feelings in my hands. I would get some like images, but trusting those and sharing those were so scary in the beginning. And I think it's almost by design that at the beginning of our practice, it feels like grasping at straws. It's like strengthening that trust muscle. It's strengthening that faith. And that's the other thing too. It's like our guides are very deliberate in how they lead us. If that feeling of, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger because it just feels right now, but I don't really have much to go on. That's maybe a lesson they wanted to enforce for you for like years, because maybe that's a lesson in trusting your first instinct and trusting the timing and strengthening that trust muscle that then shows up in other areas of your life. Like it's all so interconnected. And what I would say too, for somebody like you, is that there might be more for you outside of just oracle cards. There might be ways to develop your practice of just seeing, like asking your guides a question and starting to journal, or opening up in meditation and seeing what comes through. It's like there might be different ways to unlock your superpowers.
That's so true. I should explore that more, especially the inspired writing. I was really inspired by our episode with Rebecca Campbell about that, because I love to journal, but I never really thought about it in that regard. And also with creativity, there's so many ways to connect. And I think the process of like humbly surrendering to being like, I'm a novice at this, or I don't really know what I'm doing, kind of frees us up to like find all sorts of new ways to connect and maybe surprise ourselves, and takes the pressure off of being like, I need to get this right. It's like, I trust that the messages will reach me because they want to reach me and I want them to reach me. So that's all that needs doing. And then for the rest, I just need to notice the signs, and maybe one of the signs I'll notice years later or whatever. It's like, it is a process, but I think the more open and gentle we can be with ourselves, the more in flow we can be.
Yeah. And as I've said before, you will never miss a message that is meant for you. You just can't. Like we were saying in the beginning, and I love how this always happens where it ties into the intro, whether it's through a movie or a book or an article or a dream or an idea or a conversation with a friend or just seeing the same thing over and over, you can never miss a message that is meant for you. And something else I wanted to comment on in your experience of oracle cards too is that your guides are like deliberately asking you to trust yourself, like through that process of not getting that, like, I loved what you said about ecstatic ping. That made me laugh. But then I feel like the intuitive stuff starts to ramp up when you look at the card. And that's where you do get that resonant feeling or understand where they're going. It's like, for me, oracle cards, they're a practice of anchoring our energy and our focus, but they're a launching off point. Like the oracle card itself is like a launching off point for like directing our consciousness somewhere. So I think it's like they're so rich and there's so much we can go from. And like when I started my readings and working with oracle cards, like I would literally read the description to the person. And that was fine because I was doing a free year of practice reading. So whatever. But like we all have to start there. But then it starts to evolve where it's like, I'm talking about younger me. Like I got to a point where I could just sit with the card and be like, this is what the imagery makes me feel. This is what I felt as I was pulling it. And it's very subtle. It's like how when you're around someone all day, you don't see them aging. But then years go by and you're like, oh my gosh, they got taller. They're this, they're that. The growth is subtle, but it's when you look backwards after a long period of time that you see how far that you've come. And that isn't to say you can't have like big leaps of progress in your intuitive development journey, but it just ties in with those like planets as spirit guides, trusting the timings, knowing the cycles, and realizing how far you've come when you look backwards.
Yeah, I think I've said this on the pod before, but I had this wonderful dance teacher who would always tell us, like, when you come to class, just try and get like this much better. Just chip away at it. You're not going to come to class and do a double pirouette straight out of the gate. But after coming and chipping away at it, in 2 years, you might turn around and be like, oh my God, I'm doing it. And I think that's so true for everything that we dedicate ourselves to and put in the time and energy. We don't see the growth moment to moment, but it doesn't mean that we aren't growing. And I think that's part of the trust too.
Absolutely. And our spirit guides and our angels and our loved ones, they see us growing and they notice it. And they're like, nope, same lesson again and again and again. And we're so used to like instant gratification in this society, but trusting the timing of our development is really beautiful. And here's the thing too, is that if your practice starts to feel stagnant or stale or like it's not serving you, that's a message too. That doesn't mean you just have to sit in that staleness all the time and just trust the timing. That is definitely not what we're saying. If it's starting to feel stagnant or stale and not resonant, it's time to shake it up a little bit. It's time to expand a little bit. It's time to try something new that maybe scares you a little bit, but also feels exciting.
Yeah, that's part of the trust, right? Is like trusting, oh, this isn't lighting me up right now. How can I shift? How can I come with that playful curiosity?
And I think there's only so far we can go on our divination journey on our own. I think that there's an essential component of working with other people and getting messages from them, messages for them, because I think that like we can do up to a certain amount of self divination, but then we can never really prove to ourselves how tapped in we are when it's for ourselves. But we can really see how tapped in we are when we're like, wow, I could not have known that for this person. That's what I'm so excited for in my mentorship container. We're going to do a lot of really amazing exercises. Like I'm basically taking the summation of my almost 10 years as a reader and taking all of the lessons, the struggles, and the things that have been pitfalls for me along the way and distilling them into practice exercises and lessons for you guys so that you can confront them head on. It's like everything I wish I freaking had, but I was completely self-taught except for mediumship.
That is so exciting. I know that we're going to get another surge of emails after hearing about, it just sounds so magical, Taylor.
Yay. Becoming the Oracle. I was so excited when that name came through to me.
And that's a fun thing too, not to go on a huge long tangent, but when we were in the early stages of Magic Hour and Taylor came to me and said she wanted to start this podcast and we were like, okay, we need to come up with a name. And it took us a while.
Yeah.
We had a lot of things that we were like, that's not it. That's not it, you know? And we didn't panic. We didn't freak out. We just kept saying, we're like, it'll come to us. It'll come to us. It's going to land someday. And then it did. And when it did, it was like, of course. It made so much sense when it came to you.
Yeah, exactly. Everything in its perfect timing. And I've been feeling like I wanted to do a mentorship container for a long time too. But then it was Mars retrograde and I was going through personal things and I needed spaciousness. But that spaciousness connected me here. And that's kind of a thing too, is that our guides see the whole path. And at the time of me creating spaciousness, I didn't see a mentorship container on the other side. I just saw that I was burnt out and I needed space. But my guides were like, first direct her to spaciousness. And then that spaciousness is where we can get the downloads for what wants to be built next. So it's like they're always playing chess while we're playing checkers. And we really, like, the more that we can just say, oh, direct me where you want to direct me. That's what I feel like. Wherever your consciousness is going is for a reason. Explore it with playful curiosity and life will just flow so much smoother than trying to like force and hold and push and beg and claim. And it's so much easier when you just go with where your consciousness is leading you, because consciousness is directed by every form of our spirit guides.
Yeah. And we think we understand, we think we have all the information, but we don't. I think about so many beautiful gifts in my life that I didn't plan for. I was talking about this last night at dinner with two of my best friends. I met them when I took a waitressing job and then met one of my closest friends ever. I didn't plan for that. I just needed a job. So it's like, we don't know what magic lies on the other side of us flowing with where the universe wants to take us. We're so sure what's in front of us has to be it. But like when we open up to the possibilities that there's more than we could have even dreamed of, that's when I really feel like the magic starts to flow to us.
Imagine us at Groundlings knowing what would come of our friendship then. Like, we just could not know.
That's such a perfect example too. Like we just took a comedy class or we were freaking out about our careers happening. And now we have this like beautiful sisterhood that we'll have forever.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yay. Okay, let's do another one.
Let's do another one. Okay, this is from Kate. Hi, Taylor and Claire. My question is about learning to let my guard down. I've been told in a number of different ways that I'm very guarded. People that I have relationships with or am trying to have relationships with have mentioned to me that I'm guarded, and a few psychics and healers have told me this and have also commented on a blocked chakra. I also feel this truly in myself. I recognize that this guarding is a form of protection and connected to control and fear, but I don't know how to begin letting my guards down. I know that by doing so, I will be able to be more vulnerable, which will allow me to create real connections and relationships with others, which I deeply desire. I just genuinely don't know how. I also have been told that I have psychic gifts and also feel this in myself, but I'm wondering if this guarding that I'm doing is also preventing me from tapping into this ability. Thank you so much for helping to provide support in this. I appreciate you both and listen every Wednesday morning. Much love, Kate.
Thank you so much for this question, Kate. This is actually a very vulnerable question to ask. So that's already a sign that in the right spaces that you feel safe, you can let your guards down. So I just want to throw that out there. There's so much to say about this, and it's tough because this question, I'll answer it in how it can relate to everyone. But of course, I don't know your story or your situation or things like that. But every single thing is a messenger in some way. And so this emotion of feeling guarded, it's already a really great sign that you're observing this and that you can be the observer of it and not just in the story of it. So that's a really great place to start. And for me, what's coming up intuitively is like a lot of throat chakra stuff. So for me, I think that there is something about like when being in connection with others, having the ability to articulate like, yeah, I want to share my story, or yeah, I want to be closer with you, but I have a really hard time with that. When you articulate the emotions that the guardedness brings up and that fear of vulnerability brings up, it allows people to create sacred space with you and love you through it. So I think that the throat chakra already makes a bridge, and the people who can meet you on that bridge are the people that are meant to meet you on that bridge. And the people who are like, you're guarded, you're this, you're that, I can't connect with you. If you explain to them what's difficult for you and what you really would like, or whatever those things are, and they can't meet you there, there's also something on the world to make you feel safe enough to open up. It's like, it's not all on you to just be this completely open person. Like, we have to let people show us who they are before they earn the right for them to be fully open. So I just wanted to put that out there, because safe space is created by two. That being said, this is most likely tied to some inner child stuff. I would ask you to reflect back on, maybe even do a journal prompt or pull a card for yourself on, what's the earliest time that I can remember feeling guarded? What did the adults in my life model for me when it comes to vulnerability or articulating deeper emotions or sharing my vulnerabilities or insecurities or my fears or worries, et cetera, et cetera? And I would really see, where does that live in my body? Start to get curious about it, start to do some deeper reflection, because your angels and guides seem to be getting you the message about this. Like, you're getting the same message from multiple different people, and it resonates with you and you feel it for yourself. So I think now is the time to explore it a little bit deeper, to get a little bit curious. And the throat chakra stuff isn't just about telling other people, like, hey, I'm having a difficult time in this moment and this is why, or hey, I just need 10 minutes by myself to calm down. I can come back to this conversation, but it's very difficult for me. Like, just letting them love you in that way. But there's also an element of being radically honest with yourself in your throat chakra. And so what might be happening is that your head is trying to play judge and jury over your heart, where your heart is like, I don't feel safe to be held or seen. And your head is like, but I should. And why don't I? And it's like, no, just force it. And I think that is where we can get into like murky, stagnant territory. Right now, I invite you to just fully feel like the discomfort. And whether you need to do that with a professional in the space, if it's too painful, there are resources available. But I would see what that emotion as a messenger is coming up to tell you in a more curious, deep, explorative way, because that's what emotions are. They're messengers. They're not the truth of who you are. So it's important not to take this on as a story about yourself, but instead to see it as, okay, I want to get curious about where this emotion is coming from, whether it's my inner child, whether it's an ancestral pattern I'm breaking, whether it's unhealed stuff from somebody who has hurt me. I always say the only people who get hurt from having walls around their heart is the person with the walls. It reminds me of when I was young and I created walls because I was so scared of the spirit world because I didn't understand it yet. But in doing that, I also kept out my intuition and guidance, and it led me to such a rock bottom place. And we are such creatures that are wired for connection. So I would either work with a professional in the space or on your own, if it isn't too raw, start to get curious about those early memories. And I would also see, going into that idea of like worst case scenario thinking that we've talked about on a couple episodes, like I would start to visualize what it would look like to do something that felt very out of control, to be very vulnerable in front of somebody, and starting to like fantasize about that or visualize it, and then see where the discomfort comes up in your body as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, I'll offer this. It's like, the world is a wild and complicated place, and it makes sense that you would be in a place where you feel the need to be guarded. There's so many reasons that we have created protectors for ourselves, and I think they show up in different ways for each person based on the circumstances of our life, what we got in childhood, what we didn't get in childhood, what we needed that the people around us weren't able to provide. And it's different for each person, therefore. And it is scary to be vulnerable. And when we're children, of course, we're so vulnerable to everything that's happening around us, and we haven't learned how to create protectors. So it just makes sense. And I hope that you can find compassion for yourself as you navigate this, because it's so normal and understandable that you would be a human in this world who feels like you want to have your guard up. I mean, I don't think there's a single person who doesn't relate to that, if not all the time, but in moments where it's like, I've had that feeling too, where I'm like, I never want to open my heart to anyone ever again because it's painful and scary when we get hurt. And then we care so deeply for ourselves. And I think that's an important piece to look at too. Like the reason you're guarding yourself, or part of yourself that's guarding yourself, is the part of yourself that fiercely loves and wants to take care of yourself. And when we can recognize it as such, we can thank it for being such a fierce warrior of protection for ourselves. And also let it know that I think I'm stronger now and I'm in a place where I can open up. And even if I do get hurt, I'll be okay because I'm stronger now than maybe I was when I was younger and I was hurt.
Yes, I love that so much. That was so good. And I also just wanted to say that keeping your heart open after it's been broken is the ultimate act of self love. Keeping your heart open after it has been broken is the ultimate act of self love. And it's interesting because it brings me to a pattern that I see in my readings a lot, especially around love and romantic relationships. And this has happened so many times. People come in and they're like, I just want to know, should I just give up on love? Is love on the cards for me? Can I just think about other things? Like, I'm so over like wondering if love is in this life for me. Should I just focus on something else? And I think that this kind of stems from the core emotion that we're talking about here, which is like trying to protect ourselves by managing our expectations and being like, can I just expect to be alone? Should I prepare myself for that? And it's like, okay, this is actually an indication of something so much deeper that's coming up to be healed and looked at. How can we feel safe and regulated enough to be open to the possibility of what life has in store for us? And so I think that this is also like what's so important is like when we've been disappointed over and over again, when we've been hurt over and over again, if questions like that are starting to come up of, should I just give up on this XYZ thing? I think that's rooted in this emotional state of, I don't want to be vulnerable again. I don't want to get my hopes up. And I think that it all comes back to just the present moment of sitting with our emotions, feeling our ways through, co-creating with love, micro moment to micro moment. And that projecting into the future of, should I worry about this? Should I not? Is all based in control. And control is like it's a branch of fear, which is one of the inverse frequencies of love. This is like a completely different tangent, but I just want to say, like in the Love Life workshop, one of the things we talk about is, are you in an energy that love would want to dance with? Are you trying to hold love, force love, control love? Or are you just open and flowing and doing things that you love and being a version of self that loves yourself and does things that you love and creates a life that you love? That's what will attract more love to you. So I know this is coming up for a reason to say this, and watch where you feel like, should I just manage my expectations? Should I just give up? Should I throw in the towel in any area of life? Because that is showing you where there's a fear of vulnerability, surrender, loosening the reins, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, I relate so deeply to everything you just said. That was a great message for me. So thank you. But it's so true. It's like we're just doing that to control and protect. We're scared of being hurt again because we're feeling hurt. And we want to make sure this will never happen again to us. But that's just not life. Life is about loving deeply and also grieving deeply when we lose things and then staying open to receive more things. Like that is this crazy wild ride of life. And the more we can support ourselves in it, I think the more power we have to receive. And so I would offer that as well to you, Kate. Like, even if it's still feeling too scary to let your guard down with other people, where can you let your guard down with yourself in private moments with yourself, in your inner dialogue with yourself? Like a huge breakthrough I had recently was just like, I have to be the one to have my back. I have to be the one to see and rejoice in my value and my worthiness. And if other people do or don't, that can be a lovely cherry on top. But I have to start there, because if even I'm not doing that, if even I'm not a safe space for me and I'm berating myself or telling myself good things can't come my way, or using all these protectors to try and save me from being hurt. It's like that isn't fully supporting myself as deeply as I could. And so starting there to just be in a practice of deep, unconditional love for yourself, no matter what's going on, even if you're feeling super guarded today, it's like, okay, well, let's be in our little castle together, me and myself, and just love on each other in our little protected castle today. And then maybe tomorrow I'll feel brave enough to let someone in. Another thing that I'll offer too is it's so scary to be vulnerable with another person. But when we do that, we give them two gifts. We let them know that we love and trust them enough to be there for us or to see us fully, and that we trust them with ourselves. And that is such a beautiful gift to receive from a friend or a family member, knowing that like Taylor trusts me with her vulnerability. It makes me feel closer to Taylor, and it gives me permission to trust her with my vulnerability. It opens a door for me then to say, well, Taylor was open with me about what she's struggling with. And so I feel free to do that too. And so I think we give such a great gift when we're able to be in vulnerability with one another, even if it's just like Taylor said, that tiny kernel of saying, hey, I struggle to let my guard down. And so I just want you to know that's what's going on with me. It's not that I'm trying to be reserved or pull away. Sometimes I struggle to let my guard down. That's even enough of a piece to begin with to let someone in and let them know that you want to have that closeness.
Yes, such good points. And I just wanted to say, too, going back to that idea of should I just give up on this? Is this not for me? Because I do feel like this is such an important part of the conversation when it comes to being vulnerable in our lives, is like just what you were saying, Claire, like starting to be vulnerable with ourselves and how we talk to ourselves about things and having our own back. Like, I just love everything you said. Another piece that I want to add, another layer I want to add is that we sometimes feel, and this is especially as women in this society, that we have 30 minutes left. Like with aging, it's like that TikTok noise. It's like, do you know you have 30 minutes? 30 minutes. Sometimes we feel like, okay, if I haven't accomplished this by this age or this time, it's never happening for me. And I feel like that's a pressure that we put on ourselves. And I see it all the time in my readings. And it's just interesting to me how this theme of like time and the planets and cycles and stuff keeps coming up throughout this episode. I have Saturn here on my sweater, which is literally like the ruler of time and like karma and lessons. So very synchronistic. My dad actually got this for me. You know, speaking of my dad, I was going to bring him up. After my mom passed, he waited 3 years and he grieved. And now he's with a new girlfriend that he really loves. And she's amazing. And she lost the love of her life too. And they get each other. And it's like he found love. He's 68. So it's like we think these things like, but is it going to happen by this time? And I only have this time. It's what do we really think that we're going to wake up when we're in our 50s or 60s or 70s and just be like done, tapped out, like that we're not going to do anything else in our life? I think there's also an element of realizing that life doesn't end in our 30s or 40s. We still have a lot of life ahead of us. And what's really beautiful is that my mom always taught me that every year of her life got better. That's how she programmed me, is that every single year gets better. And when I see older women in my life, like, first of all, they don't get their period anymore. So can we take a moment for that? Like, cheers. Can't wait for that. Secondly, it's like I just see them in this place of freedom and discovery and self-love, you know, in retirement, and their kids are out of the house or whatever it is. It's like there's so many beautiful chapters ahead of us with so much potential. And I feel like we do ourselves a disservice when it's like, should I just write off this dream career I have? Should I just write off having love? Should I just write off this? It's like, why? Where is that stemming from? Where is that thought serving something in you? And how can you open up to the fact that life is magical and has the potential to just keep getting better?
I love that so much, Taylor. And truly, both ideas are unknown maybes. The fear of this is never going to happen for me and I should just accept that like love isn't for me, which I get. I've had that narrative in my head at times. Or the belief that, you know what, my deepest desires are within me for a reason, because they are for me. And So the love of my life, a magical, amazing connection could be right around the corner. Both of those things are uncertain. And it's so easy, I think, because we think we're protecting ourselves to wrap ourselves up with the fear. And like you said, just come to terms with it. But that actually creates pain for us in the moment. And I think pain for us the entire time we cling to that belief. And it might cause us to be closed off when something comes our way because we're so afraid to open up to it. Versus what I'm really trying to do right now for myself and my inner self, I'm trying to just be that cheerleader. If I can't believe it today, then my inner self is like, well, I'll believe it for you today. I'm going to choose the belief because the belief is full of hope and love and magic. And it's just as unknown as the fear. And I'd rather in this moment be in hope and magic and love than in fear. Either way, I don't know what's going to happen next. Like we just don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and life is the summation of our present moments. So choosing love and magic and joy and happiness, that's what life turns into. Choosing fear and worry and self-doubt. It's not that those things need to be bypassed, but they need to be felt and listened to. But then when do we start co-creating with them instead of getting the message and moving forward? And that leads me to this idea of the inner villain voice always exists. Whether like for Kate right now, it's like, you can't be vulnerable. You're not safe. Like no one can ever live up to what you need them to, whatever it's saying to you. Whether it's saying to one of my clients, just give up on love. It's not for you in this life. Just focus on other things. Whatever it's saying. For me, I'm married and it's like, what if Ari gets in a car crash? What if something happens? What if you lose him? It's like, whatever circumstance you're in, that inner villain voice follows you and it just changes to what your worst fear is then. So it's not like we get something externally and that voice goes away. It's the self-development of how much we trust that voice, listen to that voice, and give power to that voice that changes. I witness these inner villain thoughts that are like, what if Ari doesn't grow old with you? And see it for what it is. It's not the truth. I'm not letting it paralyze me. I'm not letting it make me push Ari away so that I can like spare myself future pain. But it's just an example that to us, what the inner villain voice says is so real because it's perfectly tailored to our worst fears and insecurities and shadows and ancestral healing and all the things. And so I've said this before on the pod, but think of that voice like a drill sergeant for the soul. It's like showing us, drop down, give me 20. This is where you need to get stronger. This is your weak point. This is your Achilles heel of fear. And I'm going to continuously show it to you over and over and over again. And the more you do the work on that, the more you heal that, it will still find new places to poke at you, but you'll believe it as truth less and less and see it more as an invitation for deeper reclamation of power more and more.
That's so true and such a great reframe for anyone who like hasn't found a partner. Cause I think it can be easy to be like, oh, once I find my partner or my love, then I won't be so worried. And it's like, oh no, there's a million things to worry about. Just because you have love, just because you have friendship, just because you have a career, like there's so many ways that can show up. And one of the other cards I pulled, I had such a great reading, obviously, because I keep talking about it, but it just was one of those moments where I was like, wow, that was so helpful, angels. Like, thank you. But one of the cards I pulled was alliance. And basically the message was like, who are you in alliance with? And it hit me so hard where I was like, oh, I have been aligning with that inner villain voice and the story it wants to spread. And I want to be in alliance with myself. I want to ally with the love and joy and magical version of me. I want to be my biggest support system and not listen to that fearful voice. And so I think that can be helpful in those moments too of like, who are you aligned with? Your deep, loving self or your fears? And yes, the fears come up to shine a light and show us where we need to double down on loving ourselves and double down on the belief in ourselves and our magic and the magic of the world. Like we've had so much proof of it, so much proof. And so now we can try and surrender into that trust. And not that it's easy. I mean, I am on my journey with it, but you know, I do feel it stronger and stronger the more that I choose it.
Yeah. And it's just like our intuitive development practice. It's a muscle that's strengthened with time and diligence and practice, but the root of both is self-trust. And just like you said, we have to have our own back through everything. Such a powerful conversation. And I feel like it's so needed because as a professional intuitive, I sit with people every single day and I see the same kind of themes and patterns and things coming up in what they want to talk about. And this is a big one. So I really am happy and grateful for you, Kate, for being vulnerable enough to share your experience, because this is how magic happens. When one of us overcomes that kind of shame or shadow or fear and gets vulnerable with the community, we realize just how connected we all are. And so thank you so much for your beautiful questions today. Let's transition to sitting with spirit. Hi, my loves. Taylor Page here. Before we move into sitting with spirit, I realized that I forgot to say something in the episode about my mentorship container that I'm creating, Becoming the Oracle. Part of this mentorship container is that it's more of an intermediate level that is going to build upon the building blocks of what I already taught in the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive and Healing the Witch Wound workshops. Both of those workshops have essential base knowledge that we are going to build on, practice with, and work through at an intermediate level to even some advanced stuff in the container. That doesn't mean that you have to be intermediate to advanced in terms of intuitive connection. It just means that we're going to have room to play and breathe and stretch ourselves in this container. And so it is a prerequisite to joining the mentorship program that you've already taken both of those workshops. So the mentorship program is still under development by me. More information will be released soon. But the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive workshop and the Healing the Witch Moon workshop, code 333 will give you $33 off of both workshops. And both are necessary and full of a lot of important information that I don't want to reteach in this container. I want to build and grow from there. The Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive workshop has the basics of what the clairs are, working with angels, creating a language with your angels, working with oracle cards, finding the right deck, and then Healing the Witch Wound examines our fears for this work, our religious dogma, our programming, and how the divine feminine and magic has been demonized, and recognizing where that shows up in our own practice as a block. Both are going to be important elements of the mentorship container to help you become the oracle. So this is just a heads up so that you guys can get a head start if you're looking for mentorship. The first step are those two workshops. Much love. I want to let you know about a very special Earth Angel Club happening next Thursday, May 1st, aka Beltane. It is going to be such a magical gathering. If you're not familiar with Earth Angel Club, it's a monthly gathering that I do that includes an astrology update for the season ahead, an energy reading for the group, a guided angelic meditation. The theme for this one is attracting higher abundance with Archangel Camuel. And then I give some ritual suggestions. Another benefit of Earth Angel Club is priority registration for any reading type with me. So skip the long wait list and see me sooner. I cannot wait to connect with you guys. You can sign up at angelsandamethyst.com, and code EARLY gives you $11 off until April 28th. If you can't make the session live, no worries. It will be available for replay and you can watch it at your own convenience. So if you want to celebrate the Wheel of the Year, if you want to get more magical and witchy, this is the perfect place to join like-minded community from all around the world. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels, our guides, our loved ones in spirit, and give the messages that want to come through for the collective. As always, take what resonates, leave the rest. And if you know somebody who could use this message, please send it their way. So I've noticed a big energetic shift in the collective since Neptune moved into Aries. And we've already been feeling this in subtle ways being introduced, but I think it's going to keep amplifying. And this is the sense of it doesn't serve us to forever identify as being in the depths of our healing journey. At some point, we have to move forward. We have to move past the stories of self that are created in the depths of our healing and move forward in the rebirth. And this to me is very Neptune in Aries. Neptune in Pisces was so much about deep healing, deep feeling, deep work on ourselves. And it's not like that work ever goes away, but it takes new forms. And Neptune in Pisces is so much about healing on a soul level and completion and endings of patterns and cycles. And now we're in Aries. And Aries is the rebirth. It wants new stories of self. It wants integration based off of all of the layers of healing that we've been doing. I've noticed this where sometimes our healing narratives and our healing journey of like, I'm just the type of person who's anxious and these are my triggers and these are my patterns. It's like we've done such a good job identifying and understanding, and even in some cases, feeling and healing and clearing. But where might our stories of self that have been created in our healing chapter be limiting us from the next version of self that wants to be born? A part of this energy also is we can't be in our sad girl era forever. We can't be in constant examination of the shadow, constant examination of the triggers and the pain. It's not that those things are not important and need to be avoided, but it's equally important to live our life, to move forward in a new way, to adapt new stories of self based off of how far we've come, to challenge ourselves to move forward, and also just to have fun. And so Neptune moving into Aries really feels like that. It feels like this wake up, shake up moment where it's time to integrate everything we've learned since 2011. We have gone through so many cycles of healing and clearing and breaking ancestral cycles and all of these things. And now Neptune in Aries is like, now move forward, now initiate something new, now be brave. And a big theme that was coming through for me intuitively with Neptune in Aries is walking the higher self's talk. It's like we went through this period where it's like we can understand, yeah, I'm just the type of person that XYZ. I'm just the type of person who is afraid of airplanes. I'm just the type of person who is scared of commitment because I've been hurt in the past. Okay, we've done that deeper identification. Now, how can we make a new story based on bravery, faith, and this reborn energy? Part of this too is that when you're in your healing girl era, which is very important, I am not saying to bypass or to not be on your healing journey. I'm just saying we're coming into a new collective energetic territory around these things. And when we stay in our stories of healing, it co-creates with the energy still of what we're healing from. And at a certain point, we have to stop talking about it. Once it's been sufficiently addressed and processed and worked through, and we've gotten all of the juice out of what we've gone through, at a certain point, continuing to talk about it and continuing to hold it as a part of our story of self creates baggage in this way that we carry these unnecessary things with us. It's not to say that what we've gone through hasn't informed our growth and who we are and how we want to be of service in the world. But even that's a different energetic way of speaking about it and engaging in it versus repeating it over and over and over. And that place of repeating what's happened over and over and over either shows that there's a deeper layer that needs to be seen and released there, or that your ego is involved. And there was a Marianne Williamson clip from Expanded Podcast with Jessica that I just resonated with so much. And she basically said, your pain is your ego's ultimate fulfillment. And so our soul wants this expansion and joy and magic and co-creation. And our ego can start to over identify with our healing journey and try to keep us stuck in narratives of limitation and lack and scarcity and fear and anxiety and pain. And so being in those healing stories for too long can start to swing the pendulum over to the ego getting a need met in some way. Like, where are those stories meeting a need, even if it's on a subconscious level? So being in a healing story feeds the ego, not the soul, when it's past the point of serving your excavation and growth and reclamation of power. That being said, it brings me to this story in Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I know I've shared this on the podcast before, but it's very relevant. If you haven't read Women Who Run with the Wolves, wow, it's an amazing book. And I highly recommend it. And it really changed my life. I read it around my Saturn return, and it was very needed at that time. There's a story in it where there's a tribe, and this tribe lets their members tell their most sad stories of what has happened to them 3 times. And for 3 times, everybody in the tribe will listen. They will cry with you. They will rage with you. They will scream with you. They will hold just the most epic space for this story 3 times. And after you have told this story 3 times, which by the way, 3 is such a magical number of transformation and alchemy and taking something and transforming it into a new form. And so once you've done that 3rd time and the alchemical process has worked its magic, you're not allowed to tell that story anymore, because at that point, the story is no longer serving you and it's just becoming an identity marker. And that identity marker isn't the truth of who you really are. You are so much more than what has happened to you in this lifetime. And it's really how we respond to what happens to us, who we choose to be, how we choose to move forward. That's the true yardstick of who our true self really is. And so this feels very much Neptune and Aries to me, where it is this rebirth moment where it's like, okay, it's time to walk the higher self-talk. It's time for integration. It's time for new choices. We can't get stuck in a comfort zone of I'm still in a healing journey. It feels like there's this like, okay, you've been in your healing journey, now move forward in a new way. And that feels really exciting. So again, this is a collective energy shift. And I know that a lot of us are going through really intense times right now, and we might need to be gentle with ourselves. So if this message doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. This is for the collective, though, that this is what Neptune and Aries feels like for me, where it just feels like, where are the stories of healing no longer serving and actually holding you back from the rebirth? So that being said, I also feel like there's a level of releasing perfectionism with this collective shift, where it's kind of like, I will go out in the dating world when XYZ happens. I will publish my writing when I get to this level. I will start practicing readings with people when I start getting to this place. I also feel like there's this element of like, no, now. I feel this acceleration of consciousness with Neptune and Aries, where it's like, no, now you have access to things faster with this energy. And I feel like Neptune and Pisces was very much about waiting for ideal conditions and flowing in this deep psyche-led space and going really deep with soul growth and ancestral cycle breaking and all of these things, ending of cycles. And now it's like, no, start now, start now. It's more of that fire element energy. And so as I was sitting in the power and sitting with our angels and guides, I got this really cool feeling that basically the spirit world, which includes our angels as well, like just that whole ineffable realm of support around us, is like a flow of electricity. And all we have to do is plug into it, and we are connected and the light goes on. And so it was a really cool visual and feeling, because it played into that instantaneous connection feeling that I was getting, where it's like, you don't have to sit like in the power for 30 minutes to get a message. There's this feeling too of our spiritual connection speeding up, where it's like you get the message faster, you're plugged in faster, you get right into that current of energy faster. So everything just feels like that acceleration of consciousness. And I really liked that image of us just deciding to plug in to the spirit world and it being right there, just like that electric force. So that being said, when they were giving that message about getting messages faster and acceleration of consciousness, they said all that's needed for it is the correct energetic conditions. So if we create conducive conditions for connection, it is going to come fast. And the ways we try to hold ourselves back or delay or wait for perfect, that's not the right energetic conducive conditions for that instantaneous energy. So there's just this sense of believe it, plug in, receive it. So as I started to feel into the message of this week, because that Neptune in Aries and acceleration of consciousness, that just feels like the era that we are entering into more and more. When I was feeling into the energy of this week, I felt a lot of fear grappling for the control of the crown chakra. And I almost saw this image of our brain, and there were like shadowy thoughts trying to creep in. And then there were parts of the brain that were like staying firm and grounded in our rootedness and power. And the feeling that I got is that it's so important for us to be the observer of fear right now, to not believe the fear, to not get swept into panic on a collective scale, but to be agents of peace. And this has been coming up so much, where our angels and guides do not want us to do the work of separation and hate. And I feel like a lot of people on a collective level, with all of the intensity that's going on politically and globally, I feel like a lot of people have lost the plot. And in a place of good intentions, I believe, and from a well-meaning place, are continuing to spread division and hate by this sort of black and white thinking. If you don't think exactly like I do, then you're bad. And if you think exactly like I do, you're good. And while I can understand where people are coming from with this, I feel like there's a sense of more nuance and really breaking down. Am I using my political disagreements with people? Am I giving passive aggressive comments? Am I being a proponent for further division? Am I sinking into this lower consciousness place that actually is doing the work of hate and separation? It's like when people bully people who maybe even believe the same things as them, but aren't showing up in the way that person thinks that they should be showing up. And this has been coming up so much in this age of social media and performative activism and what to post and what not, and what's acceptable and what's not. And I think that it goes back to what my aunt said on episode 104. What would love say now? Love won't bypass what's happening in the world. Love cares about the suffering of others. Love cares about where we're going collectively. But it does the work of love, not in a way that pushes people away, shames people, hurts people. It's one thing if someone is trying to be like willfully ignorant and hateful and racist and homophobic. It's like you don't have to be like giving loving words of affirmation to that type of person. Maybe love would create a boundary there. Maybe love would try to spread its awareness in a different way. But it's more of the energy of us collectively jumping down the throats of people who I think have good intentions or are well-meaning. And it feels like it's just doing the work of hate. It doesn't feel like it's moving the needle forward. I don't think that being in this vibration of judgment and condemnation and bringing people down who have pretty parallel views to you just because they aren't showing up exactly how you think they should or things like that. I don't think that's serving us. I don't think that it's serving love. And so basically this is to say, in a moment where the energy feels really heightened, in an energy where there's a lot of polarization, in a time where there's a lot of disagreement, how can you sit with that and observe it and not perpetuate, add to it, and fan the flames of hate? How can you work with it, feel it, and alchemize it to be a creative force for love right now? That is what we need more of, because we are in this moment where hate is just fueling more hate. It's not fixing anything that we care about. It's making it worse. So it's so important for us to be agents of peace, to be agents of love. And that includes how we protest. That includes how we show up. That includes how we talk to other people about these things. And again, don't mistake kindness for weakness. That doesn't mean we have to be best friends with people that we severely disagree with or who have thrown morals out of the window. But it is to say, don't let your energy be drained in hateful, diminutive acts towards those types of people. Channel it into love and service in another direction, because that's going to be what actually makes a difference and creates healing on earth instead of more division. So as I started to get into the mediumship, it was so interesting because I just had my mediumship mentorship today. And we were talking about how people come into us. My mediumship mentor is also extremely clairsentient. And in the beginning of her mediumship development journey, she worked a lot like I do, where it's like, oh, if they come in on the right, I know it's a male. And if they're all the way up here on the left, I know it's the grandfather on the mother's side. And on the right, it's the grandfathers on the father's side. It's like we have this whole grid because we can feel where the spirits are stepping in. And she was saying, I used to work that way. And my team basically said, no more. And she said, I feel like that's going to happen to you too. And that kind of started to happen today with Sitting with Spirit, where I was like, okay, I'm ready. Where are you stepping in? But instead, they're like pushing me to trust my links and not get over reliant on a system like that. And I feel like I'm leaning into my cognizance a lot. So that was very interesting. And it happened like immediately. And I'm like, okay, this is fine, but please don't like completely tear down my grid system because I really appreciate it and it helps me a lot. So that being said, as I was tuning into Sitting with Spirit, I actually saw more of an archetypal consciousness wanting to come through today. And it was the archetype of the witch. And I saw this beautiful crone-like figure that was ageless, but crone-like in the sense of this calm, wise, experienced power in the face of adversity. And this witch was standing in this dark gray cloak, which made me feel like there is no darkness, there is no light. It's like a mix. And like that gray color is part of where that power lies, like finding our ways through the in-betweens. And she was standing on this cliff overlooking stormy waters. And she had this like big witch's hat on, and she was holding a staff and was just looking out over the stormy seas. And I got this message that fear is an invitation to deeper power, and that when there is collective fear, the witch archetype is summoned. Our fear summons our inner witch. And when we are in a moment where we have a lot of fear and worry, it is that invitation to remember our magic and to connect deeper with our own powerful witch archetype that lives within us. And what was very interesting is that it made me feel like the witch being on a cliff overlooking stormy seas acknowledges a time where collectively we're in these stormy seas. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of choppy waters. There's a lot of choppy energy. But she's able to observe from above and decide what she wants to do about it from an empowered place. And it was interesting because she showed me her toad familiar. And toad to me is so tied to leaps of faith. Like when frogs and toads come up in angel readings and those animal guides come through, it's really tied to leap of faith energy. And so I feel like there is this resurgence of the witch archetype that has been happening. And it feels like now is the moment that she's been preparing us for. And so there are these messages of tapping deeper into our magic, tapping deeper into feeling safe in the in-between, not getting sucked into collective fear and panic, but stepping rootedly into what is in our power here and now. These moments where we're in choppy energy collectively invite us to deeper initiation in our magic. And so as I was feeling into this, she gave me that message, like I said, of fear summons me. Will you answer the call? So what have been your fears, and how can you answer the call of stepping into your power in a deeper way? That being said, I saw the symbol of the third eye as our way forward. And I feel like it's never been more important to tap in intuitively. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of distractions. And that's part of the conducive conditions message that came through before, is like needing space and silence, like that isolation of the cliff top, to create the conducive conditions to tap into what your heart says is true. and what your guides want you to do and where you're being directed. Strong boundaries from all of the distractions feel really important to say. There is an element of the witch archetype, especially this kind of crone-like witch that I'm seeing, that is based in solitude. And I feel like solitude is part of the medicine of disconnecting from maybe the choppy waves of the collective energy and dropping into what your own heart says, what your own truth says, what your own guidance is. And so all emotions are messengers, and fear is a messenger that's especially prevalent, especially on the collective level right now. And we run from fear. We don't want to feel fear. We want to be comfortable. But fear invites in the witch, and fear invites us to step into a stronger version of self when we feel the fear and we do it anyway. And so this is a really powerful moment for you to meditate with your inner witch, to sit with your inner witch, and to ask myself moment by moment, what would love say? How could I make a more powerful choice? What is in my power here and now? Where are my biggest fears trying to pull my puppet strings? And how can I remember the spiritual toolbox, mind, body, soul that exists for me here and now? So feels like a really powerful week. It feels like there's a lot of spiritual initiation this week. It feels like there's a lot of acceleration. And I just love this idea of we are not alone in our fear. When we are in moments of deep fear and despair and unknown, that is what summons our inner witch to answer the call in a deeper way. So will you say yes? Will you answer that call? How can you remember that you are magic? Have a beautiful week, my loves, and we will see you next time.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. If you review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we'll add your name twice. And if you share the podcast on your Instagram story and tag us, we'll add your name a 3rd time. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 222 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.